The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. And your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Thursday, April 23rd. Your readers today are
Ruth Nowotniak
and Pat Lamont. And our weather. Partly sunny today, a high of 66. Mostly cloudy tonight, a low of 45. Mostly cloudy and cooler tomorrow with a passing shower, a high of 59. Saturday, occasional rain and drizzle, a high of 53. Sunday, cloudy and a high of 58. Nationally, the high was in Chamberlain, South Dakota, 95. And the low was in Presque Isle, Maine, 19. Our sunrise today was at 6:21. Sunset tonight will be at 8:07. And we have weather trivia back. What name is given to a heavy, wet snowfall during the early spring? The answer is a sapling bender. And Ruth and I have never heard of that. I wonder if any of you have. And I guess we'll just have to keep wondering. And now to our front page news. State of County Address will focus on affordability. And this is by Sandra Tan, who is a news staff reporter. When Erie County Executive Mark Poloncarz delivers his annual State of the County Address Thursday, he will include his usual highlights of economic growth, financial stability, and road and infrastructure improvements. But this year's dominating theme and major announcements regarding new programs and priorities revolve around affordability. New homeownership affordability and utility cost reduction programs, from mortgage assistance to free light bulbs, receive attention in this year's address to be held this afternoon in Shays Performing Arts Center. Poloncarz also intends to use his biggest stage of the year to point out positive signs that poverty in Erie County has fallen during his time as county executive. The state of Erie County government is strong and the state of our community is strong, but there are people in need, he said in a meeting this week with the Buffalo News. The affordability crisis is having an impact and we're going to focus on it. Also receiving attention are some changes to county parks, including one pilot program that will allow golfers to bring their dogs with them on a county golf course. Well, that's interesting. Poloncarz recollected how naysayers scoffed when he talked about making poverty reduction a priority in his 2014 State of the County address. There were a bunch of people on the legislature and other members that just looked at me and said, "That's stupid. A county cannot make a difference," he recalled. But Poloncarz referred to census data indicating that while 15.6% of the county population lived in poverty in 2015, that percentage has fallen to 12.6% as of 2024, with the sharpest decrease in poverty levels occurring among African Americans. The county social services welfare data supports the same downward trend, with those needing public assistance falling by a third during the same period, he said. Nevertheless, the county should do more to address the nationwide affordability crisis. I reject the premise that government is the problem and cannot solve problems, because when you say that, what you're saying is people can't solve problems. A government, in its essence, is its people. It is its hopes and aspirations. It is a group of individuals in the community coming together saying, here are our priorities, he said. As is common in Polikar's State of the County address, he refers to the principles of the county's founding fathers. There's a reason why the first lines of the preamble of the Constitution say, "We the people, in order to form a more perfect union." It wasn't perfect then, it's not perfect now. We all have a responsibility as citizens to do our best to ensure that the American dream, the promise of America, is attainable for all our fellow residents, not just to a select few. His new initiatives to promote affordability. First-time homebuyer assistance. Polikars intends to ask the county legislature to approve the allocation of $2 million in the 2025 budget surplus money to help first-time homebuyers pay down mortgage lender fees upfront to lower their mortgage interest rates. Promoting multi-use housing in the suburbs. Polikars wants suburban communities to allow the construction of more multi-unit housing, including doubles and triples, which generally are more affordable than single-family homes. But zoning codes in many towns forbid such construction. The county will help any municipality willing to amend its zoning codes. We need to allow doubles and triples to be built again, which will not only reduce the cost per unit, but that will allow the home buyer to use the rental income to help pay their mortgage. So I'm going to call on the towns to amend their zoning codes, and if you do that, the county will help pay for it. We will help pay for the cost of amending the zone codes and do the work necessary through the Department of Economic Development. Assistance for seniors. Polikars wants to improve outreach efforts to seniors who are eligible for heating and nutrition assistance but have not enrolled in existing HEAP assistance programs and supplemental nutrition programs, commonly referred to as SNAP or food stamps. AARP estimates that 59% of seniors eligible for subsidized nutrition assistance are not taking advantage of it. We're going to make a more concentrated effort to actually focus on that to get more seniors enrolled, even if it's $20 a week, he said. That $20 a week can help buy a number of things for seniors, and the same thing with HEAP. Next, utility assistance. Polikars is expected to announce the expansion of the Erie County Low Income Program for Sustainable Energy, or it's known as ECLIPS, that will partner renters and homeowners with solar farms for discounts of up to 10% on their electric bills. Originally open only to low-income people, the program has been expanded to anyone regardless of income. Excuse me. Separately, Polikars said he also intends to roll out a new program that would allow residents to exchange high-energy incandescent and halogen bulbs for energy-efficient LED bulbs free of charge. Parks, golf courses, and dogs. While affordability initiatives will cover a lot of Polikars' State of the County address, Polikars also intends to devote some of his speech to quality of life issues, including county parks. That includes plans to expand Red Jacket Park in Buffalo by another 24 acres for passive use, and a one-year pilot program for golfers who walk the Grover Cleveland Golf Course in Buffalo. While most Buffalo courses do not allow dogs to walk the course, the county will institute a pilot program that will allow golfers to bring their leashed dogs with them as they play their rounds on the city's Grover Cleveland Golf Course. Polikars pointed out that St. Andrews Golf Course in Scotland, the birthplace of golf and the oldest course in the world, allows dogs to accompany golfers without issue. The website Bring Fido also mentions a few golf courses statewide, including Idaho, Washington, Oregon, and California, that permit furry companions to join their golfing parents on the greens. Polikars says the new rules allowing leash dogs at Grover Cleveland will be part of a one-year pilot program to see whether it works or causes problems. Dog owners will have to keep their dogs under control and pick up after them. So if you want to go golfing and walk your dog, you can do that as well, said Poloncarz, himself a golfer and dog lover. It's small stuff, but it matters.
Iran fires on 3 ships in Strait as standoff with U.S. continues. This is an Associated Press article. Iran fired on 3 ships in the Strait of Hormuz and seized 2 of them on Wednesday, intensifying its assault on shipping in the key waterway. The attacks came a day after President Trump extended a ceasefire while maintaining an American blockade on Iranian ports. The standoff between the U.S. and Iran has effectively choked off nearly all exports through the strait, where 20% of the world's traded oil passes in peacetime, with no end in sight. Iranian media said the paramilitary Revolutionary Guard was bringing the 2 ships to Iran, marking a further escalation, though the White House said the seizures didn't violate ceasefire terms. The conflict has already sent gas prices skyrocketing far beyond the region and raised the cost of food and a wide array of other products. The price of Brent crude oil, the international standard, nosed over $100 per barrel, marking a 35% increase from pre-war levels, but stock markets still appear to be shrugging it off. The European Union Energy Commissioner Dan Jorgensen warned of lasting impact for consumers and businesses, likening it to other major energy crises over the last half-century. He said the disruption is costing Europe around 500 million euros, which is $6 million, each day. Iranian media said the MSC Francesca and the Epaminondas were being escorted to Iran. The U.S. had earlier seized 2 Iranian vessels as the ceasefire talks were due to take place in Pakistan. Technomar, the management company behind the Liberian-registered Epaminondas, said it was approached and fired upon by a manned gunboat off the coast of Oman. It said the ship's bridge was damaged. A second cargo ship came under fire hours later with no report of damage, though the vessel was then stopped in the water. No injuries to the crew of either vessel were reported. The MSC Francesca's owner could not be immediately reached for comment. The Guard attacked a 3rd ship identified as the Euphoria, which had become stranded on the Iranian coast, Iranian media reported, without elaborating. Iran taking control of 2 ships didn't violate truce terms because those were not U.S. or Israeli ships. These were 2 international vessels, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt told Fox News Channel. There have been more than 30 attacks on ships in the Mideast since the U.S. and Israel launched the war on February 28th with a surprise attack on Iran. Before then, the strait was open for all traffic. Vortexa, an analytics firm focusing on global energy and freight markets, said it has recorded 34 movements of sanctioned and Iranian-linked tankers in and out of the Persian Gulf in the week after the U.S. imposed its blockade on April 13th. The firm identified 19 outbound and 15 inbound movements. 6 of the outbound movements were confirmed laden with Iranian crude, representing about 10.7 million barrels, it said in an email. It was not immediately clear whether all those barrels reached markets overseas. Iran's ability to restrict traffic through the strait, which leads from the Persian Gulf to the open ocean, has proved a major strategic advantage. While the ceasefire means that the American and Israeli airstrikes have stopped in Iran and Tehran's missiles no longer target Israel and the wider Middle East, the maritime standoff continues and could escalate further. Without any diplomatic agreement, the attacks will likely deter ships from even attempting to pass through the waterway, further squeezing global energy supplies. Mohammad Qualibaf, Iran's parliament speaker who met with Vice President J.D. Vance in Pakistan earlier this month, said a complete ceasefire only makes sense if not violated by the blockade that is taking the world's economy hostage. Reopening the Strait of Hormuz is impossible with such flagrant breach of the ceasefire, he wrote on X. Iranian Foreign Ministry spokesperson Ismail Baghai told state TV that Iran has not decided whether to take part in a new round of negotiations with the U.S. He accused the United States of a disregard and lack of good faith in the negotiations. The head of the Iranian mission in Egypt earlier told the Associated Press no delegation would go to Pakistan until the U.S. lifted its blockade. Leavitt, the White House press secretary, told reporters that Trump hasn't set a deadline for receiving a proposal from the Iranians. Ultimately, the timeline would be dictated by the commander-in-chief in the United States, she said. In the Iranian capital, Tehran, many grappled with the uncertainty. We should know where we stand. Is it going to be a ceasefire, peace, or the war is going to continue? Said Masala Mohammad Sagda. The way things currently are, one doesn't know what to do. In southern Lebanon, 3 separate Israeli strikes killed at least 5 people and wounded others, according to local authorities. Israel denied carrying out one of the strikes and did not immediately comment on the other. It came as Israel and Lebanese ambassadors prepared for a new meeting in Washington today toward extending a fragile ceasefire.
You are listening to the reading of today's Buffalo News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 16 minutes after the hour, and we will go to our editorial. Eyes on the Prize. As Earth Day marks its 56th anniversary, the nonprofit earthday.org has chosen a theme for the year: Our Power, Our Planet. The phrase is a broad, even vague call to action, but one sentence appearing below that header sums up the situation pretty well. Clean air, safe water, and climate resilience aren't optional, they're essential. At the federal level, these words don't seem to mean very much. In Washington, under the Trump administration, regulations governing water and air pollution are being gutted on a regular basis. And ensuring climate resilience seems something to be scoffed at, excuse me, rather than worked toward. That's not the case in New York State. In 2019, New York enacted the Climate Leadership and Community Protection Act, which set ambitious climate goals using 1990 as a baseline.
It calls for It calls for a 40% reduction in greenhouse gas emissions by 2030 and an 85% decline by 2050. It's no secret that even though the legislation was enacted, the follow-through necessary to move its goals forward has barely been started. And now there are proposals being raised during budget negotiations that would further delay that follow-through. New Yorkers are being told that follow-through actions such as a cap and invest roughly polluters pay policy will cause their energy bills to rise even higher than they are now. An opposing argument states that the cost of fossil fuel infrastructure, like gas mains and pipelines, as well as the volatility of oil and gas prices due to events such as the U.S.-Israeli war in Iran, have pushed up utility expenses. It also states that estimates about the cost of cap and invest are distorted. What's getting lost in this back and forth? The goals laid out under that Earth Day slogan: clean air, safe water, and climate resilience. Whatever happens to New York's timeline, it remains a fact that moving quickly on green energy production reduces dependence on fossil fuels, lessens air pollution, and ultimately saves residents money. That's the prize New York must keep its eye on. Other states are facing the same federal headwinds as New York, but are making moves that advance their climate goals. For example, Illinois is moving forward with the passage this month of the Clean and Reliable Grid Affordability Act, which expands energy conservation and seeks to increase development of battery energy storage, among many other provisions. And Texas, which has no net zero timeline whatsoever and remains a top polluter, nonetheless has installed roughly 69,000 megawatts of onshore wind, solar, and battery storage in the same period that New York has installed 11,000 megawatts. New York can and must do better. There is action the state could take to move big green energy projects forward. The Accelerate Solar for Affordable Power Act, which has passed the Senate, would dramatically increase New York's distributed solar capacity and streamline the process for connecting new projects to the grid. But instead of talking about progress and possibilities, we have a debate that is overladen with fear-mongering. Yes, a supportive federal partner has turned into a hostile opponent. This is not a wholly unexpected development. To some extent, it can be overcome. Federal interference with wind and solar production has been successfully overturned in court, most recently with an April 21st deadline agreeing that the Trump administration had imposed unlawful roadblocks against such projects. The most important thing to remember on this 56th Earth Day is that action on reducing the effects on climate change and moving as quickly as possible to clean energy generation is also a justice issue. Low-income communities of color have long been on the front lines of the struggle for an emission-free environment, as studies show. They are the least able to prepare for and recover from heat waves, poor air quality, flooding, and other extreme events. They are often located in the vicinity of polluting industries and power plants. New York's climate law has many provisions that can help alleviate these wrongs, but only if it remains strong and the state moves forward on its goals.
Another voice. Thank you, Ruth.
Mm-hmm.
New York State Legislature has an opportunity to strengthen pediatric oral health and health outcomes. Fluoride varnish legislation has a clear purpose: to allow a child's parent to apply fluoride varnish to teeth when there is a prescription and under protocols of an authorized provider. I really apologize. I don't know what happened. This bill passed the New York State Senate. The next steps are consideration and passage by the Assembly, then on to Governor Kathy Hochul's desk. Tooth decay is a common preventable childhood disease. Fluoride varnish is an effective, safe, low-cost tool that dramatically reduces the risk of cavities, protects tooth enamel, and supports healthy tooth development. By expanding who is permitted to apply fluoride varnish in community settings, New York will make a preventive oral health services more accessible during the years when they matter most. Parents already brush their children's teeth daily, often navigating much more complex health needs that require inhalers, insulin, and other high-stakes and time-sensitive care. For households balancing multiple jobs, limited childcare, or inconsistent transportation, this change makes the difference between receiving preventive care and going without. For children with sensory or behavioral challenges, home treatment makes the experience calmer and more effective. Children in low-income communities experience significantly higher rates of dental disease, yet they also have the fewest opportunities to receive early preventive treatment. The need is even more acute in communities like Buffalo, which was without fluoridated public water for nearly a decade. This legislation helps bridge that gap. From a public health and pediatric dentistry perspective, this change would deliver meaningful, measurable benefits for all families, dental practices, and clinics that serve Medicaid populations face unprecedented demand, staffing shortages, and limited share time. Prevention is more effective, humane, and cost-efficient than treating disease. New York should move this legislation forward and deliver more smiles for kids. Assembly Majority Leader Crystal Peoples-Stokes sponsored this important bill. Getting it over the finish line would benefit her legacy as a champion for families and children. I'll give you that number of that bill once again. It is S 6759 slash A8145. That's S dot 6759 slash A8145. And this was written by Gail Burstein, who is the Erie County Commissioner of Health. And our editorial cartoon today, it's one frame. It is by Mike Lukovich, and it is a President Trump sitting on both sides of the table with an apple drink with a straw in it, and he's looking at himself. And there are two gentlemen standing on the other side, which would depict diplomats or negotiators. And the one says, hopefully these talks will bring the two sides together, referring to the two sides being President Donald Trump.
Our first opinion piece is by Nolan Finley, who is from the Tribune Content Agency. Ready or not, here comes Slotkin in 28. Ambition is the enemy of patience and preparation. Just look at Senator Elissa Slotkin. The Michigan Democrat has spent the past several weeks visiting the key presidential battleground states of Iowa and Ohio as she tests the waters for a 2028 run for the White House. Slotkin, 49, told the Des Moines Register she wants to help the Democratic Party find a future path that is built around a new generation of leaders, a group she clearly believes includes herself. I am not so arrogant as to think it has to be me, Slotkin said. No, just arrogant enough to think her skimpy political resume and lack of substantive achievements during her brief time in Congress qualify her for consideration for the world's top elected position. Slotkin went on to say, midterms is what I'm focused on right now, but if it comes to the point afterwards that I think there's not anyone else who's on the right path, I guess I wouldn't say no forever. To whom is she saying no? Who is clamoring for Elissa Slotkin for president? Before she turned up in Iowa, the first stop for anyone considering a presidential bid, the junior senator from Michigan wasn't on anyone's list of potential Democratic nominees in 28. Her visits to bellwether states are designed to force her name into a conversation that so far hasn't included her, and wasn't likely to without her self-promoting stunt. Most amusing is her pretense to being a reluctant savior of the Democratic Party. She's not fooling anyone in demurring that, while she hopes she doesn't have to. If no one else will step up, she guesses she will. Slotkin is a relentless climber. The former State Department and CIA staffer returned to Michigan in 2017 to run for Congress in a mid-Michigan district. She rode the 2018 Democratic wave to victory over incumbent Republican Mike Bishop. She won re-election twice, and when Senator Debbie Stabenow retired in 2024, Slotkin jumped into the race to replace her, narrowly winning in a race against former Republican Representative Mike Rogers. Now, Slotkin has posted a trimmer, more youthful-looking official photograph and is daring to dream of the Oval Office. Never mind that when the 2028 election comes around, she'll still be 2 years shy of finishing her first term in the Senate. And yes, Barack Obama had served just 3 years in the Senate and 8 years in the Illinois legislature before becoming president. But Elissa Slotkin is no Barack Obama. Perhaps she's betting by the time the campaign starts in earnest, she'll have emerged as a leader in the Senate and will have put her stamp on policies that address America's substantive challenges. Maybe between now and then, she'll have a chance to demonstrate a true gift of getting things done. But that's not where she is today. Rather, she's a competent, promising first-term senator with the potential to become ready for the position she aspires to, but not if she short-changes the preparation process. Think Thad McCotter, a former Michigan congressman who launched a premature presidential bid 15 years ago that ended poorly. In repeating that mistake, Slotkin risks becoming just another egocentric politician who was given a job by voters and instead of doing it, She's going to spend the next 2 years focusing on her personal career ambitions.
And our next opinion, you are listening to a reading of the today's Buffalo News on the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is 30 minutes after the hour. And our next opinion piece comes from Elizabeth Shackelford of the Chicago Tribune. World should study Hungary's hard-won lessons for democracy. News cycles this year have been a relentless parade of hard knocks, and April has been no exception. But recently, the people of Hungary delivered good news. They came out in record numbers with nearly 80% participation to decisively vote out Viktor Orban, the country's long-standing illiberal prime minister. The opposition TISZA party secured more than 2/3 of the parliamentary seats, winning a powerful supermajority. This would be a remarkable feat in any election, but in Orban's Hungary, it is stunning. He spent his 16 years in power painstakingly building a system of competitive authoritarianism, where the trappings of democracy, elections, opposition parties, and news media still existed. But the system was so rigged that the regime needed to not govern well to maintain in power, to remain in power. Orban's allies in parliament redrew electoral districts and reworked election laws so strongly in his party's favor that it secured a supermajority twice before, despite securing fewer than half the votes. Opposition parties were locked out of television and radio coverage, prohibited from advertising on public stations, and cut out by private media controlled by wealthy Orban allies. In 2018, Orban's supermajority manipulated the judiciary by creating a parallel court system under the executive to rule on public administration cases, effectively insulating his allies from legal accountability. It's no wonder corruption skyrocketed. That was how Orban enriched his friends and allies, and they helped keep him in power in return. The warped playing field meant TISZA had to win big to beat Orban's ruling Fidesz party at the ballot box, and that is exactly what it did. It won by such huge margins that Orban quickly conceded rather than dispute the results with claims of fraud in an attempt to rally his supporters to stop the steal. This achievement offers important lessons for those seeking to defend democracy from authoritarian creep around the world. First, in conditions short of absolute authoritarianism, as long as elections are still happening, ousting a wannabe dictator is possible. Second, policy disagreements alone are unlikely to mobilize enough of the population to beat such odds. Orban's fatal flaw was believing his system was fixed enough that it would keep him in power, even as his corruption brought ruin upon his country and its people. But it's the economy stupid, as an election explainer still generally reigns supreme. Orban's leadership brought severe economic stagnation. Hungary had far higher inflation than its peers and is much poorer. Unemployment is at a 10-year high. Making matters worse, his illiberal actions so conflicted with European Union rule of law standards that it froze 18 billion euros in EU funding in 2022. Orban frequently lambasted the EU, but its funding helped keep the country afloat despite his disastrous economic policies. Cutting up the financial lifeline undoubtedly played a role in revealing his leadership for what it really was. Orban's family and friends have become spectacularly wealthy through gifted government contracts and other grift. Many have become billionaires 4 years in a row. Transparency International has named Hungary the most corrupt state in the EU, and it shows. Orban wasn't taken down by liberal democratic ideals, but by his own excessive greed. He is being replaced not by the left, but by an anti-corruption party on the center right. Peter Magyar, the opposition leader, originally came from Orban's own party and left Fidesz not for policy reasons, but on account of the widespread kleptocracy. Though it is clearly pro-Europe and anti-Vladimir Putin, TISA will likely champion many of the same conservative policies as Fidesz, such as its harsh stance on immigration. What it has promised is what the people voted for is to root out the corruption now embedded in the system. During the campaign, TISA committed to amending the Constitution to ensure such corruption could not continue. Magyar has called for all of Orban's cronies in the government to resign and has committed to holding to account those who plundered Hungary. This will not be easy. If Magyar fails to fix the system and deliver results, a return to autocracy would be likely. This, too, is a lesson that pro-democracy movements around the world need to recognize. Magyar has declared, "Never again a country without consequences." Let's hope he can and does deliver.
And our final opinion piece is by Jackie Calms. She's from the Los Angeles Times. Americans must pay attention to the deficit, even if Trump won't. Americans could be forgiven if they're unaware that President Trump recently performed one of his most essential tasks and sent his annual budget request to Congress, though months late and stunningly incomplete. After all, so much else has been dominating the news lately. The Mideast war that Trump promised not to start, price raises he vowed to end, his repeated insults of Pope Leo XIV, his portraying himself as Jesus Christ, then lying about having done so, an incompetent attorney general to fire. And the president's actual priorities, plans for a $400 million White House ballroom and a massive triumphal arch nearby. It's a lot. Once again, as in Trump's first term, the public and press are inattentive to the nation's fiscal health relative to past years. But that reflects the president's own disengagement with reconciling spending and revenue. This from a president many Americans voted for based on his purported prowess as a businessman. For decades back to Ronald Reagan's time, so-called deficit wars in Washington were a big story. Now, even Republicans in Congress complain of Trump's absence from the fiscal fray as they struggle to belatedly finish this year's budget work that was due last fall, and to end a weeks-old partial government shutdown before turning to the budget for the fiscal year ending October 1. Yet it's worth paying attention to U.S. budgets, even if Trump won't, for the sake of our children and grandchildren who'll inherit the bills. In one document, the federal budget reflects the nation's priorities, and these days, in the perennial guns versus butter debate, Trump has made his feelings all too plain. "We're fighting wars," he told a group at the White House on April Fool's Day. "We can't take care of daycare, Medicaid, Medicare, all these individual things." Forget that Trump swore to end wars, or that last year, long before he went to war with Iran, he cut $1 trillion over 10 years from Medicaid and other health care programs in his misnamed One Big Beautiful Bill. Yes, budgets can be boring, especially to a president with a famously short attention span. Trump and many of us Americans are distracted constantly by all the shiny objects he throws at the national consciousness by his words, acts, and social media postings at all hours. Yet the budgetary trend is clear to anyone bothering to look. As president, Trump has once again exacerbating the nation's unsustainable course of piling up debt. According to the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office, among other credible sources, debt is now approaching the highest level in U.S. history, which was reached during World War II. It already surpasses the size of the entire economy and threatens higher borrowing costs and reduced investments. For all the achievements Trump likes to claim, ending 8 wars in a year, here's one that's real. He's on a path to break his own record for the most debt in any single presidential term, $8.4 trillion in Trump 1.0, which was nearly double the increase under President Joe Biden. Need further proof of Trump's brazenly mendacity? Of course you don't. But here it is. In the face of the well-documented budget record, Trump declared both this year and last year to a joint session of Congress on national television that he would balance the federal budget overnight, he said in February. The inequitable tax cuts, the big spending increases for the military, and immigration crackdowns that Trump and the Republican-controlled Congress enacted last year are significantly greater than in his first term and are driving up the debt despite Republicans' deep health care cuts. Just months after Trump took office, the ratings firm Moody's downgraded the nation's sterling credit rating for the first time in more than a century. And now in his new budget request, Trump seeks to inflate military spending from under $1 trillion when he regained office to $1.5 trillion, for the biggest year-to-year increase in military budgets since World War II. This fiscal irresponsibility is happening at the worst possible time. For the last quarter of the 20th century, presidents and Congresses of both parties annually debated how to reduce deficits and several times reached consequential multi-year deals, culminating during the second Clinton term in 4 straight years of surpluses. Those surpluses ended, wait for it, with Republicans' tax cuts and war spending during the George W. Bush administration. Politicians back then were moved not just by the deficits of their time, deficits that, as a share of the economy, were less than half of what they are now. They also were responding to experts' warnings of a demographic tsunami by the 2020s. With the aging of the huge baby boomer population, spending for Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid would greatly increase, even as the workforce whose payroll taxes support those programs shrank. Today, the number of people 65 or older is almost 3 times what it was 50 years ago, and rising. This reckoning is upon us, though you wouldn't know it, as Trump keeps calling for cutting revenue and spending more for lawless wars, immigration raids, and monuments to himself. Barring bipartisan action, in 2033, Social Security's retirement fund and Medicare's hospital fund will no longer be able to cover beneficiaries' full claims, according to their trustees' annual report, necessitating reduced benefits or shifts of money from other worthy programs. Trump did put Vice President Vance in charge of a war on fraud, but that holds about as much promise as Elon Musk's fiscal fiasco, remember Doge? That cost money instead of cutting $2 trillion as promised. Like other problems, Trump likely will leave the fiscal follies to his successor, who, should he or she win 2 terms, would preside as Social Security and Medicare become insolvent. I've yet to hear any of the early 2028 presidential aspirants or Trump address or be asked about that. Let the debate belatedly begin.
Apple's strengths could become its impediments. Apple built its empire on control. For decades, the company's tightly managed ecosystem, spanning custom chips, proprietary operating systems, and curated apps, delivered devices that were secure and easy to use. That approach helped turn the iPhone into the most successful consumer product in history, generating nearly $210 billion in revenue last year. It also made Apple the world's top valued company for much of the past decade, a position only overtaken by artificial intelligence chipmaker NVIDIA in 2024. But when incoming Apple CEO John Ternus takes over from Tim Cook this fall, he will face a question that is key to the company's survival in the AI age, testing the limits of Apple's practice of curating which apps and services can tap into its hardware. The current wave of AI innovation has been driven largely by openness, quick iteration, broad developer access, and tools that work across platforms. Companies such as OpenAI, Google, and Meta have released models that sometimes spin off unintended directions but improve visibly and continually, attracting developers and users at a pace few traditional product cycles can match. Apple, not unexpectedly, has been curious. Cook, a loyal steward of Apple co founder Steve Jobs' vision, has emphasized privacy and quality that only come with tight control. That restraint has earned it trust with users, but also left the company open to antitrust pressure in the US and abroad, including a legal battle with Fortnite creator Epic Games and new European Union rules that force Apple to allow more competition on its devices. That tension has intensified with AI as the boom tends to reward speed and experimentation. By choosing a hardware leader in John Ternus, Apple may be signaling that it still believes the future of AI will run through tightly integrated devices, not just software, said Timothy Hubbard, assistant professor of management at the University of Notre Dame's Mendoza College of Business. That could be smart, but it also raises a deeper risk. The very strengths that made Apple dominant, their discipline, polish, and control, could become constraints if the next era rewards openness and faster iteration. That rapid innovation is where Apple started, and maybe that's where the company needs to return. Starting with Jobs, who turned around an ailing Apple in the late 1990s, and then Cook, who made Apple's services business into a $110 billion annual sales powerhouse, the firm has proven that tight integration leads to long-term customers and durable profits. Now, Ternus' biggest challenge will be weaving AI into Apple's impenetrable ecosystem at a time when a more open approach is taking the world by storm. One example is OpenClaw, a software that can control an army of AI agents that can carry out complex tasks traditionally handled by humans and has spread widely in China with users ranging from school children to grandparents. But OpenClaw also illustrates the risks of openness. The software remains raw, carries security vulnerabilities, and can take alarming actions, including exposing private financial information on the open internet. The tensions it exposes are exactly those Apple has long sought to avoid. Ternus has been clear in interviews that Apple was interested in shipping products rather than raw technology such as OpenClaw that generate excitement but do not become daily staples like iPhone.
Conflict crimps oil production. Analysts say the distribution could affect the global market for years. The world economy lost more than $50 billion worth of crude oil that wasn't produced since the Iran war began about 7 weeks ago, and the aftershock of the crisis will be felt for months and even years to come, according to analysts and Reuters calculations. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said April 17th the Strait of Hormuz was open following a ceasefire accord agreed in Lebanon, while U.S. President Donald Trump said he believed a deal to end the Iran war would come soon. However, Iran closed the strait the next day after the U.S. continued its blockade of Iranian ports. Since the crisis began at the end of February, more than 500 million barrels of crude and condensate were knocked out of the global market, according to Kepler data, the largest energy supply disruption in modern history. Even when the Strait of Hormuz does open, recovery of output and flows is expected to be slow. Global onshore crude inventories fell by about 45 million barrels so far in April, according to Kepler. Since late March, production outages have reached about 12 million BPD. Heavier crude fields in Kuwait and Iraq could take 4 to 5 months to return to normal operating levels. Extending stock draws through the summer, Robol said. Damage to refining capacity and Qatar's Ras Laffan LNG complex means full restoration of regional energy infrastructure could take years. Parsing the numbers, 500 million barrels of oil lost to the market is equivalent to curtailing aviation demand globally for 10 weeks, no road travel by any vehicle globally for 11 days, no oil for the global economy for 5 days.
As part of our newspaper reading, we now present today's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555. Borth David. Herndon Sr. Edward. Thompson Charles, but nicknamed John. And on the national level, Dave Mason, the co-founder of the psychedelic British band Traffic, songwriter behind classic rock hits like Feelin' Alright and A Hole in My Shoe, and Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, died Sunday in his home in Gardnerville, Nevada. He was 79 years old. Once again, if you need further information on any of these names, please call us at 716-821-5555.
And now we turn to our horoscopes, the Royal Stars. Happy birthday for Thursday, April 23rd, 2026. You're compassionate, intellectual, and inquisitive. You enjoy talking to people and have a strong sense of justice. This is a year of new beginnings, adventures, and major changes. The stars show the kind of day you'll have. 5 is dynamic, 4 positive, 3 average, 2 so-so, and 1 difficult. Aries, 4 positive day. Keep your eyes open because it's possible that you can get richer today. It might be in a tiny way, but it could be in a bigger way. One can only hope. Tonight, socialize. Taurus, 4-star positive day. This is a favorable day because the Sun, Venus, and Uranus are all in Taurus, and your ruler Venus is lined up with unpredictable Uranus. Tonight, relax at home. Gemini, a 3-star average day. This is probably a restless day for you, even though you feel keen to talk to others and you also might feel competitive. You're a bit unsure of your direction. Tonight, interesting conversations. Cancer, 4-star positive day. This is the classic day to meet someone unusual, perhaps a friend or an acquaintance in a group setting. This person could be a romantic interest or not. Tonight, check your money. Leo, 4-star positive day. Today you might encounter an unusual authority figure. Hi, Darth. Quite possibly this conversation will make you feel restless, but it also might inspire you in some way. Tonight you win. Virgo, 4-star positive day. Unexpected opportunities to travel might fall in your lap today. If so, act quickly because this window of opportunity will be brief. Tonight, enjoy quiet time. Libra, 3-star average day. You're high viz today. People notice you more than usual. Quite possibly, something unexpected will occur that causes this. Tonight, be friendly. Scorpio, 3-star average day. Don't be surprised if someone close to you makes an unusual suggestion today. They might have news about potential travel plans or something to do with higher education, medicine, or the law. Tonight, you're noticed. Sagittarius, also a 3-star average day. Your work routine will be interrupted today by something unexpected. Tonight, explore and learn. Capricorn, a 3-star average day. New romance or an unexpected flirtation with someone who is different might occur today. Meanwhile, today holds all kinds of fun-loving opportunities. Tonight, check your finances. Aquarius, a 3-star average day. Stock the fridge because spontaneous get-togethers and surprise entertaining might occur for you. This could be related to your work or something to do with a pet. Tonight, cooperate and listen to others. And Pisces, today is a 3-star average day. Keep your wits about you today because this is a mildly accident-prone day. However, it's an exciting day. Tonight, work.
And today in history, in 1635, the Boston Latin School, the first public school in what would become the United States, was established. And in 1988, a federal ban on smoking during domestic airline flights of 2 hours or less went into effect. And from our political notebook, Oz has plans to audit each state's Medicaid. Dr. Mehmet Oz, the administrator of the Federal Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services, said Tuesday that the Trump administration will require every state within 30 days to turn a plan to revalidate the healthcare providers that participate in their Medicaid programs. The Trump administration has pledged to root out what it calls rampant fraud in state Medicaid programs, but thus far it has focused almost exclusively on Democratic-led states, even though fraud involving government benefits isn't any more prevalent in Democratic-led states than in Republican-led ones, according to the federal data. Oz said Tuesday that the administration will expand its Medicaid antitrust fraud effort to all 50 states. You've been listening to a reading on articles and features from the Buffalo News for Thursday, April 23rd. Your readers today are
Ruth Nowotniak.
And we'll return within a few minutes to continue. Thank you for listening.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
We'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers are
Pat Lamont.
and Ruth Nowotniak, and we'll now go to our City and Region section. Jamal owns $1 million judgment to contractor on 14 projects. This is written by Jonathan Epstein, who's a news staff reporter. Washington developer Douglas Jamal is facing a combined court judgment of just over $1 million owed to a Buffalo electrical contractor after he allegedly defaulted on an October 2025 agreement to settle liens totaling $1.9 million on 14 local projects. Oh, sorry. Jamal said he won't have a problem paying it, even though he hasn't as of yet. Industrial Power and Lighting Corporation, based on Depot Street in Buffalo, says Jamal agreed 6 months ago to pay $1.47 million to resolve mounting claims from the contractor that it hadn't been paid for work it did on projects ranging from Seneca One Tower, the Statler, and the Hyatt Regency Buffalo to the Elmwood Bidwell project. The contractor had filed mechanics liens on 9 of the projects, seeking payments ranging from $23,000 to $462,000, but the two sides settled the dispute with an agreement that acknowledged the total $1.9 million balance but reduced it by 22% and allowed Jamal to pay the lesser $1.47 million amount in 3 payments that would be allocated among the 14 claims. Jamal also signed court documents outlining and admitting to what he owed for each project, plus late fees. According to the affidavit filed by IPL's attorney, Elizabeth Crangell of Duke, Holzman, Photiadis, and Ritter, Jamal made the initial $200,000 payment when he signed the agreement, with that money applied to the Elmwood Bidwell venture, whose debt was then reduced to $158,000. In February, Jamal and his companies also paid the $263,000 owed for Seneca One. But no other payments have been made, even though the second amount of at least $634,000, not including the amounts owed for either Elmwood Bidwell or Seneca One, was due on April 6th. Crangell then sent a letter of default and gave Jamal 10 more days to pay, and he did not. The third payment for the balance of the debt is not due until October 6th, along with a 7.5% late fee of $142,000 because the second payment was late. Crangell declined to comment for IPL. Jamal downplayed the debt, saying he had given IPL $10 million to $12 million of business between the projects. "I'm going to pay him," he said. Meanwhile, work continues on the developer's Elmwood Bidwell project at 976 Elmwood Avenue, where Douglas Development Corporation is spending well over $15 million to restore a cluster of deteriorated but historic buildings into a mixed-use complex in the Elmwood Village. Jamal expects to complete the Elmwood Bidwell project by June. It will feature 48 apartments plus 6 first-floor storefronts. However, that is the only project that Jamal is currently working on, as the others are all on hold until economic conditions loosen up enough for him to finance them. That's similar to what's happening with most major developers. "It's just moving along, waiting for things to change and get better like everybody else," Jamal said. In the meantime, he has put many of his properties up for sale, including the Simon Electric properties, a couple of small buildings on Main Street, the Butler Mansion on Delaware Avenue, and the Mahoney State Office building at Niagara Square. But the owner of Seneca One Tower stressed Tuesday that he is absolutely not looking to get out of Buffalo completely. "I'm just looking to concentrate on the bigger things going on and the things that are important, which is the Statler," he said. Jamal bought the Statler in 2020 and has worked over the past 4 years to finish reviving the lower floors while stabilizing and repairing the building. He plans to redevelop the rest of the 18-story building and its 3 towers into a hospitality, residential, and office designation, restoring the Italian and English Renaissance structure to the glamorous position it once held as part of Ellsworth Statler's hotel empire. Plans call for 443 apartments across 12 floors and 213 boutique hotel rooms on 3 historic floors, plus 129,000 square feet of office space on 2 lower floors. That's in addition to 22,000 square feet of restaurant and retail space, 70,000 square feet of event space, and 175 parking spaces in the basement. But the project will cost at least $140 million and likely much more. Jamal has previously stated that he needs about $30 million in grants or other financial assistance from the state or other sources in order to cover the gap, but the state has provided only $10 million. That led to a war of words with the Hochul administration, but Jamal said they are trying to work together again.
Interim Police Commissioner defends conduct but acknowledges optics of Granville matter. Interim Buffalo Police Commissioner Craig Macy said that while he did not do anything wrong on the night that former Erie County Narcotics Chief Daniel Granville crashed his county-owned vehicle into 7 parked cars, in hindsight he would have done some things differently. Macy, who was the department's chief of detectives at the time of the crashes in April 2024, sat before the Common Council's Police Oversight Committee Tuesday, where he answered questions about phone calls from then Lieutenant Lucia Esquilin, Granville's sister-in-law, who drove him away from the scene before the primary investigator had a chance to speak to Granville. Macy spoke to Esquilin several times in the hours following the crash. Macy was Esquilin's former supervisor, and she was seeking his advice on what to do with Granville's vehicle and what traffic infractions should be written up. According to testimony and documents from the city's Internal Affairs Division released by Mayor Sean Ryan's office. Granville, who was a high-ranking investigator for the Erie County Sheriff's Department before he retired, originally received a single traffic ticket for going the wrong way on a one-way street following the string of crashes in a residential neighborhood. The incident sparked accusations of a cover-up and police favoritism and made headlines again this year after Ryan released a trove of documents about the city's investigation of the matter. I fully understand in hindsight the existence of those calls, particularly viewed alongside what is now publicly known, can raise questions. I recognize those optics and how they can be perceived as part of a broader narrative, said Macy. Esquilin was demoted as part of her discipline following the investigation, a rare punishment in the department. Macy said that there are many car crashes in Buffalo every year. Then he thought he was helping a colleague who he has not supervising at the time with standard advice. If he had the benefit of hindsight, he said he would have told her to call the shift watch commander to the scene. Then there's another layer of supervision that's there, Macy said. Council members were quick to point out that Macy was not in a supervisory role at the time of the incident when former Commissioner Joseph Gramaglia was in office. South District Council member Christopher Scanlon, who asked the interim commissioner to appear before the committee, thanked Macy several times for his more than 20 years of service to the police force and his prior military service. Scanlon and other council members also asked Macy about department policy as it related to the department's handling of the investigation. Granville was never subjected to field sobriety tests despite multiple people who called the police that night to say he appeared intoxicated. Macy came out of retirement at the beginning of the year to serve as interim commissioner while the Ryan administration conducted a national search for rights replacement. University Council District member Rashid Wyatt also recognized that Macy was not in charge during the time of the crashes or the investigation. Still, he said, the damage to the trust of the department is done, and BPD will need to do more to rebuild that trust. You can't tell me that there wasn't a cover-up, he said. Asked by Police Oversight Committee Chair David Rivera what would prevent a similar situation from playing out again, Macy pointed to a number of protocol changes that have happened in recent months: body camera policy changes, a new conflict of interest policy, a new policy on who can fill out investigation documents that would prevent the same problems from arising. There are some other policies, conflict of interest and enhanced requirements of notifications of misconduct or even alleged misconduct to supervisors or appropriate units and agencies. Scanlon said after the meeting that he appreciated Macy showing up to answer questions and that he believed he answered honestly with information that will help the council and the department going forward. Ruth?
Judge dismisses lawsuit to halt police training facility, and this is by Justin Sondel, who's a news staff reporter. A judge has dismissed a lawsuit seeking to halt construction of a Buffalo Police Department training facility on the east side, but the fight may not be over. State Supreme Court Justice J. David Sampson this week granted the city's motion to dismiss the lawsuit brought by neighboring residents and the advocacy group Liberation for One, Liberation for All, agreeing with some of the city's arguments and dissenting on others. Sampson did rule that the neighbors and the group do have standing, which will allow them to continue the legal fight. A news release from the advocacy group, known also as LOLA, said the group plans to appeal the decision. Over the past year, we have grown meaningful relationships with neighbors throughout the Broadway-Fillmore neighborhood and across Buffalo, and are excited to continue to do so as we move forward with this campaign and our appeal, the release said. The lawsuit filed last month claims that resident concerns were ignored and that several key approvals, including environmental and zoning clearances, were not done properly. Included in the arguments for the court to halt the process are that the city, one, improperly approved a zoning variance allowing the project to go forward, two, did not comply with the State Environmental Quality Review Act by omitting the gun range as a use in related documents, three, plans to improperly use bonds issued for a similar facility at a different location in South Buffalo, and four, does not have the approval of the state legislature to change the use of part of the property from parkland as is required under state law. In the ruling, Sampson writes that the plaintiffs did not present enough evidence to show that the environmental review process was done improperly or that the city could not use the land for new purposes because it was never properly disposed of as parkland as required under state law.
McCaffrey donates gaming consoles to Children's Hospital. A National Football League star who is not named Josh Allen has made a donation to the Golisano Children's Hospital Buffalo, though the gift was inspired by the Bills quarterback. McCaffrey's foundation, known as the Logan Project, has donated 3 specially designed portable video game kiosks to the hospital. He is an all-pro running back for the San Francisco 49ers, and Golisano Children's Hospital said in a news release that McCaffrey was inspired by Allen's connection to the hospital. McCaffrey wanted to support kids in Buffalo in Allen's honor, the hospital said. As a side note, Allen and McCaffrey were among those who reportedly attended Seattle Seahawks quarterback Sam Darnold's wedding on April 3rd, so maybe Allen put in a good word to McCaffrey for the hospital, but that's just playful speculation. GCH, Children's Hospital Buffalo, said the gaming carts began use throughout the hospital last week, with pediatric patients enjoying them and using them to help escape the hurdles of being in the hospital. What a nice gift from somebody not from Buffalo.
Yes, that's nice. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service. The time is approximately 14 minutes past the hour, and we will continue with sports. Fit to be tied, Stanley Cup playoffs. It's anybody's guess who will start in goal for Game 3, and this is by Rachel Lindsay. Rachel Lindsay, who's a news staff reporter. Lindy Ruff won't give up the ghost or the starting goalie for the Buffalo Sabres. The Sabres coach wasn't about to publicly name his starter ahead of Game 3 of the Stanley Cup playoffs first-round series against the Boston Bruins. The Bruins host the Sabres at 7 p.m. Thursday at TD Garden in Boston. Who's the starting goalie anyway? It's a fair question to ask after the Sabres pulled starting goalie Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen for Alex Lyon 16 seconds into the third period of the 4-2 loss game in Game 2 on Tuesday at KeyBank Center. Luukkonen had just given up the fourth goal to Boston, but the one people won't forget is the fluky bounce off Morgan Geekie's dump in that took a hop past Luukkonen as he attempted to stop the puck. The goal made it 2-0 Bruins at 16:29 of the second. Ruff didn't publicly comment to a change Wednesday, but he certainly left the door open for one after the loss. Ruff doesn't discuss personnel decisions, and tersely said as much when asked if he had decided on a starting goalie for Game 3. I usually don't talk about who's starting, Ruff said. Consider that the Sabres rotated Luukkonen and Lyon on a game-by-game basis from February 25th to March 27th. It was about preservation as much as it was a gambit. Keep both players fresh while negotiating a schedule that had the Sabres playing up to 4 games in a week. Rotating Lyon and Luukkonen in goal for more than 4 weeks may be paying some dividends in the playoffs, at least as far as preservation goes. Sustainability is really important, Leon said. It's hard to go 9 months and really exhausting yourself emotionally every single night. The Sabres signed Leon from free agency to a 2-year contract in July. Part of the rationale in bringing Leon in was to stabilize depth in goal with a proven veteran presence behind Luukkonen. Leon was 2010-4 with a .907 save percentage and a 2.74 goals against average with 3 shutouts in 36 regular season games this year. Leon, a 10-year NHL veteran, also has playoff experience in the NHL and American Hockey League. He helped the Chicago Wolves win the American Hockey League's Calder Cup championship in 2022, then helped the Florida Panthers reach the Stanley Cup final in 2023. The Sabres' drought on the power play continues. They'll enter Game 3 in a 0-for-31 slump that dates to April 2nd, and the man advantage units finished 0-for-5 Tuesday in the Game 2 loss to Boston. Some of our execution, some of our puck play hasn't been good enough, said Lindy. We've stabbed a few pucks and we need to hang on that would give us more zone time. The Sabres are 0-for-9 in the power play in their first 2 playoff games against the Bruins, despite putting 18 shots on goal on those power plays. Obviously, we'd like to get on board. Power plays are huge in the playoffs, and we've got to find a way to put one in and just be better. Ruff said forward Noah Ostlund is real close to returning to the lineup and that he would consider Ostlund a possibility for Game 3. Ostlund, who has 11 goals and 16 assists and is a +11 in 60 regular season games, sustained an upper body injury March 25th in a 4-3 overtime loss to the Bruins and resumed skating with the Sabres on April 18th.
And with regard to the NHL draft, the rankings for the top players at each position, I'm going to read the position and the 3 top choices because this article is too lengthy. Here are the Buffalo News rankings of the top 10 players of each position in the 2026 NFL Draft. This was compiled by Jay Skursky, Catherine Fitzgerald, and Lance Lasowski. Quarterbacks, number 1, Fernando Mendoza of Indiana. He's 6'5", 236 pounds. Number 2, Ty Simpson of Alabama, 6'1", 211 pounds. Number 3, Garrett Nussmeier, LSU, 6'2", 203 pounds. Wide receiver, number 1, Carnell Tate of Ohio State, 6'2" and 192 pounds. Number 2, Makai Lemon of USC, 5'11" and 192 pounds. Number 3, Jordan Tyson of Arizona State, 6'2" and 203 pounds. 4, running back. Number 1, Jeremiah Love from Notre Dame, 6 feet, 212 pounds. Number 2, Jardarian Price of Notre Dame, 5'11" and 203 pounds. And number 3, Mike Washington Jr. of Arkansas, 6'1", 223 pounds. For tight end, number 1 is Kenyon Sadiq from Oregon, 6'3", 241 pounds. Number 2, Eli Stowers of Vanderbilt, 6'3", 239 pounds. Number 3, Max Clare of Ohio State, 6'4", 246 pounds. For offensive tackle, number 1, Francis Malgoa of Miami, 6'5", 329 pounds. Number 2, Spencer Fano from Utah, 6'5", and 331 pounds. And number 3, Monroe Freeling from Georgia, 6'7", 315 pounds. For interior offensive line, number 1 is Ola Vega Ione from Penn State, 6'4", 220 pounds. Number 2, Chase Bisontis of Texas A&M, 6'5", 315 pounds. Number 3, Emmanuel Pregnon of Oregon, 6'4", 314 pounds. For the edge, number 1 player, Arvell Reese of Ohio State, 6'4", 241 pounds. Number 2, David Bailey from Texas Tech, 6'4", 251 pounds. And number 3, Reuben Bain Jr. of Miami, 6'2", 263 pounds. For interior defensive line, number 1 choice, Caden McDonald of Ohio State, 6'2", 326 pounds. Number 2, Peter Woods of Clemson, 6'2", 298 pounds. And number 3, Caleb Banks of Florida, 6'6", 327 pounds. For linebacker, number 1, Sonny Styles of Ohio State, 6'5", 244 pounds. Number 2, C.J. Allen of Georgia, 6'1", 230 pounds. Number 3, Jacob Rodriguez, Texas Tech, 6'1", 231 pounds. And for cornerback, number 1, Mansour Delane of LSU, 6 feet, 187 pounds. Number 2, Jermod McCoy of Tennessee, 6'1", 188 pounds. Number 3, Colton Wood, also of Tennessee, 6 feet, 193 pounds. And finally, for safety, number 1, Caleb Downs of Ohio State, 6 feet, 206 pounds. Number 2, Dylan Thieneman of Oregon, 6 feet, 201 pounds. And number 3, Emmanuel McNeil Warren from Toledo, 6'4", 201 pounds.
And for the NBA playoff roundup, Sixers get even in series with Celtics. VJ Edgecombe had 30 points and 10 rebounds while playing through pain after taking a hard fall on his back early in the game. Tyrese Maxey scored 29 points, and the Philadelphia 69ers beat the host Boston Celtics 111-97 on Tuesday night to tie their playoff series at 1 game apiece. Edgecombe made 6 of the 76ers' 19 three-pointers. Maxey also had 9 assists. Edgecombe is the first rookie to record at least 30 points and 10 rebounds in a playoff game since Tim Duncan in May of 1998. The Celtics cut a 7-point deficit at the start of the fourth quarter to 91-89 before an 11-0 run put the 76ers back in front 102-89 with just over 4 minutes to play. The Celtics pulled their starters with a little more than a minute remaining. Jaylen Brown led the Celtics with 36 points. Jason Tatum added 19, 14 rebounds, and 9 assists. The series shifts to Philadelphia for Game 3 on Friday. Spurs star injured to loss to Blazers. Scoot Henderson scored 31 points, and the Portland Trail Blazers took advantage after a scary injury to Spurs star Victor Wembanyama, rallying for a 106-103 victory at San Antonio on Tuesday night to even their Western Conference playoff series at 1 game apiece. Wembanyama was diagnosed with a concussion after he tumbled face first when he was fouled by Drew Holiday and his jaw slammed into the floor. He did not return after the injury in the second quarter and entered the NBA's concussion protocol, which raises the possibility the versatile player could miss multiple games. The second-seeded Spurs looked like they could win without Wemby, building a 14-point lead in the fourth quarter before their offense stagnated. Portland held San Antonio without a field goal for the final 3 minutes, and as the Blazers closed the game on an 11-2 run. Game 3 is Friday in Portland. James and Smart boost Lakers to a 2-0 lead. LeBron James had 28 points, 8 rebounds, and 7 assists, and the shorthanded Los Angeles Lakers outlasted the visiting Houston Rockets for a 101-94 victory Tuesday night and a stunning 2-0 lead in their first-round playoffs. Marcus Smart had 25 points and 7 assists for the Lakers, who have twice overcome the absences of Luka Doncic and Austin Reeves with a team effort led by the 41-year-old James. Luke Kennard scored 23 points for Los Angeles, which nursed a small lead throughout the fourth quarter of Game 2. Smart found James streaking down the lane for a theatrical dunk with 55 seconds to play, and Kennard added 2 late free throws to ice it. Game 3 is Friday in Houston.
And the U.S. women's team to seek 5th straight title. The U.S. women's basketball team will face China, Italy, and the Czech Republic in the Women's FIBA World Cup in September, looking to win its 5th consecutive title. The World Cup will be held September 4th through the 13th in Berlin, with the WNBA taking a nearly 3-week break in its season to accommodate the event. The Americans have won the last 4 World Cups dating back to 2010. They took bronze in 2006. The U.S. squad could feature a lot of young talent, including Caitlin Clark, Paige Buchers, and Angel Reese, to go along with veterans Aya Wilson and Brianna Stewart. The young trio helped the Americans win a World Cup qualifying tournament in Puerto Rico last month. The Americans are in the Group D. They beat China for the gold medal in the 2022 World Cup. Buoyed by the success of the 2022 World Cup in Australia, the field was expanded to 16 teams for the first time since 2018. We just finished qualifiers with 24 teams that had never happened before. We had played before with 16 teams, said the Secretary General Andreas Zaglis. Women's basketball has grown a lot, and 12 teams didn't fit the quality we had. 16 represents what we believe is today's standards for our women's game. Well, congratulations, ladies.
Yes. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. The time is approximately 29 minutes past the hour, and we will go see what Asking Eric has to say. Potential retiree fears boredom when work stops. Dear Eric, I'm a woman in my early 60s. I was recently given notice that my job will end in a couple months due to the current federal financial situation. It was grant funded. I love this work, but because my husband can't move or work remotely, I'm limited to jobs close to home or remote. I've been applying but haven't received any offers. I'm wondering whether I should just retire. I could take care of my health, pursue hobbies, and be there for my parents and potential grandkids. But I worry that I'll get bored, and then when even older, have even more trouble finding work. I'm sure I'm not the only one in this position. Any words of wisdom or solace? Signed, I'm still worthy. Dear Worthy, I'm really glad you chose this sign-off for your letter because it's true. You are worthy. And though the job market is difficult and you may encounter ageism as you pursue a new position, your worth is not defined by what you do. First, the truth. You may get bored, but you've been bored before. One of the challenges that retirees often talk about is having to relearn who they are and how they relate to the world. This can be counterintuitive. You are not different the day after you retire, but there can sometimes be a challenge to programming your time meaningfully. Give yourself grace and take it day by day without committing yourself to a version of your new life too quickly. You may find, for instance, that your calendar fills up and you don't have time to be bored. Or you may find that activities and hobbies don't scratch the itch and you want to get a part-time job in a new field or volunteer your time. It's all possible. Possibility is daunting, but possibility is also such a treasure. Think of this transition, whether to another job or to a retirement chapter, as akin to going off to college. You have the skills, but you will be learning a new terrain, so it may not always seem easy or comfortable. Talk to friends and loved ones who are already retired or have changed careers later in life. They'll have tips and suggestions as you feel your way through. He writes so well. He gives such good advice. Dear Eric, we recently lost a 14-year friendship and have no idea why. My husband and I became friends with this guy through church. Over the years, we saw him as a younger brother. We helped out whenever asked, buying a car, moving. He had helped us with similar stuff as well. He told us that he and his wife are moving at the end of January. We reached out to them to see if they needed help. We called and texted and were sent to voicemail or no response to our texts. Getting worried, we reached out to a mutual friend to find out if everything was okay. The mutual friend said he would call and find out and then let us know. As we waited on pins and needles, we did not receive a call back. We tried reaching out to the mutual friend, and we feel like he has blocked us too. Later that evening, as we were waiting for a response from the mutual friend, I received a text message from our friend stating our friendship is over. We were removed from various social connections, and our numbers were blocked. My husband was so distraught, he wanted to confront them at their current home. We don't know where they are moving to. I told him not to, as it would cause more issues. We don't make friends easily, and to lose one over who knows what is heartbreaking. Is there anything we can do to find out, or should we just leave it and try to move on? Lost and Confused in Seattle. Dear Lost and Confused, this behavior is so perplexing, especially after a 14-year friendship. Even if there's much that hasn't been included in this letter, and I'm not saying there is, this situation doesn't seem like it's your doing. What's clear is that there's another narrative going on for your friend, and perhaps the mutual friend. Why they would choose to cut you off instead of being upfront about what the problem is, I don't know. It indicates that they feel the problem is something they can't address or that you won't change. I agree that showing up at your friend's house and forcing a conversation would escalate things, but it seems unlikely that you'll get to the bottom of this without a direct conversation. Try approaching the mutual friend in person, talk about what you've noticed in their behavior, and ask them to help you understand what you're missing. Pat?
And we will go to our first life feature. Colleges turning to oral exams in bid to combat AI. The assignment involves no laptop, no chatbot, and no technology of any kind. In fact, there's no pen or paper either. Instead, students in Chris Schaefer's biomedical engineering class at Cornell University are required to speak directly to an instructor in what he calls an oral defense. It's a testing method as old as Socrates and making a comeback in the AI age. A growing number of college professors say they are turning to oral exams and combining a variety of old-fashioned and cutting-edge techniques to help address the crisis in higher education. You won't be able to AI your way through an oral exam, says Schaefer, who introduced the oral defense last semester. Educators are no longer naively wondering if students will use generative AI to do their homework for them. A big question now is how to determine what students are actually learning. College instructors across the U.S. are noticing troubling new standards as generative artificial intelligence becomes more sophisticated. Take-home essays and other written assignments are coming back perfect. But when students are asked to explain their work, they can't. The long-term impact of AI use on critical thinking remains to be seen. But educators worry increasingly see the hard work of thinking as optional. At the University of Pennsylvania, Emily Hammer, an associate professor of Middle Eastern languages and cultures, now pairs oral exams with written papers in her seminar classes. It comes across as if we're trying to prevent cheating, Hammer says. That's not what we're doing this. We're doing this because students are actually losing skills, losing cognitive capacity, and creativity. Hammer forbids AI use on all writing assignments, but tells her class she knows she can't enforce that. However, if they haven't written their papers themselves, defending the material face-to-face will likely be a very stressful situation. Hammer's class is part of a massive shift toward in-person assessments, both written and oral. At Penn, says Bruce Lendhall, executive director of the school's Center for Teaching and Learning. The Ivy League school is one of a small but growing number of universities that have started running faculty workshops on oral exams. Oral exams are not traditionally part of the modern American undergraduate system. Unlike certain European universities, for instance, in the Oxbridge tutorial system in England, students meet faculty for weekly discussions. Some U.S. colleges saw a move toward oral exams during the COVID-19 pandemic to address concerns about online cheating, and interest has intensified since the launch of ChatGPT in 2022. During the pandemic, engineering professor Hui Ji launched a 3-year study at the University of California, San Diego, on how to scale oral exams. Several universities have since invited her to provide faculty workshops or discuss her research. At New York University, several types of oral assessments are on the rise. More faculty are requiring office hours, assigning presentations, and cold calling on students in class. Instructors are saying, I need to look my students in the eye and ask, do you know this material? Says Clay Shirky, Vice Provost for AI and Technology in Education. One NYU professor has put a modern spin on the traditional oral test. Panos Iperitos Rotas, a professor at NYU's Stern School of Business, unveiled an AI-powered oral exam last semester for the final exam in a class on AI product management. He calls it Fighting Fire with Fire. Students log in from home at any time that fits their schedule. A voice cloned from a business school professor greets them. Hi there, says the voice on the screen. It asks for the student's name and school ID number and then says, I'm ready to conduct your exam today. The chatbot starts with questions about a final group project and drills into details based on each student's answers. If the student stumbles, the AI agent gives them clues, along with criticism and positive feedback. Iperi-Rotis grades the exam separately, also with the help of AI. We wanted to check, do you know what your team did? Were you a free rider? Did you outsource everything to AI, he says, who designed the tool with 11 Labs, a company that develops generative AI voice agents to conduct job interviews. Students in the class this semester are redesigning the AI agent to smooth out some kinks, and Iperi-Rotis plans to use it in all his future classes. I want oral exams everywhere now. I want to pair it with every single written assignment, says Iperi-Rotis. I don't trust written assignments anymore to be the results of actually thinking. Well, that's very interesting.
I like
isn't it?
that. I
like that. I think, some students that can't write might outperform others.
Right.
That's awesome.
Rulings boost mandates to post 10 commandments. This is an Associated Press article. Court rulings are bolstering mandates to display the 10 commandments in public schools in the U.S. as supporters push to expand the role of religion in classrooms, including making Bible stories required reading for students. The biggest drive yet to put the 10 commandments in every classroom began last year in Texas, where a challenge to the law was batted down Tuesday by a U.S. appeals court. While the issue remains far from settled, the ruling was a victory for conservatives who reject arguments that the displays proselytize to students or step on the rights of parents, including families of other faiths. The law has been met with a mix of enthusiasm and alarm, animating school board meetings and prompting the handing down of guidance to teachers about what to say when students ask questions. Some teachers have resigned instead of hanging the 10 Commandments in their classrooms. Here are some things to know about the issue. States pushing the 10 Commandments. Republicans in the South have led the way. Louisiana became the first state to pass a requirement in 2024, followed by Arkansas and Texas. The latest is Alabama, where this month Republican Governor Kay Ivey signed a law requiring the 10 Commandments to be displayed in 5th through 12th grade public school classrooms where U.S. history is routinely taught, as well as common areas like cafeterias and school libraries. Texas law, signed by Republican Governor Greg Abbott, requires the 10 Commandments to be posted in every public school classroom and took effect in September. With the law only requiring districts to hang them if they are donated, conservative groups and individuals began dropping off boxes of posters at campuses across the state as the school year began. The Associated Press analysis of state legislation compiled by the bill tracking software Plural found at least 30 measures introduced for current sessions would require the display of the document at schools. The bills were all introduced by Republican lawmakers, and nearly all of them in GOP-controlled states. Only a few have been endorsed by a legislative committee. There are also bills in some states to allow the display or to require teaching that includes the document. Courts give supporters key victories. For months, a lower court ruling blocked about a dozen Texas districts from hanging the posters, but the Fifth U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in New Orleans reversed that in a 9-8 decision that said the requirement does not violate students' or parents' rights. No child is made to recite the commandments, believe them, or affirm their divine origin, the rule says. The American Civil Liberties Union and other groups that challenged the Texas law on behalf of parents said they were extremely disappointed in the appeals court's decision. The First Amendment safeguards the separation of church and state and the freedom of families to choose how, when, and if to provide their children with religious instruction, they said in a statement. This decision tramples those rights. In February, the same appeals court cleared the way for Louisiana to enforce its own law. That state's Attorney General, Republican Liz Murrill, celebrated the decision in the Texas case, saying it adopted our entire legal defense. The larger fight over school religion in schools. The 10 Commandments mandate in Texas is one of several fronts in the battle over religion in classrooms. In 2024, the state approved optional Bible-infused curriculum for elementary schools, and a proposal set for a vote in June would add Bible stories to required reading lists. In neighboring Oklahoma, the former top education official required public schools to begin incorporating the Bible into lesson plans for students in grades 5 through 12, prompting a lawsuit from parents and teachers. Many schools simply ignored the mandate. Last year, the Oklahoma Supreme Court blocked an attempt by the state to have the first publicly funded religious charter school in the country. The case is pending before the U.S. Supreme Court. The ACLU and other groups that challenge the Texas law have said they anticipate appealing the Fifth Circuit's ruling to the U.S. Supreme Court.
Fix it or ditch it. This is from Dear Angie, or Ask Angie. We've all felt that sinking moment when a familiar hum goes silent, the fridge stops cooling, the washer won't spin, or the oven won't heat on a busy weeknight. When an appliance quits, the big question follows: do you repair or replace it? The right answer depends on age, repair, cost, performance, and whether a fix buys you meaningful extra life. With a little strategy, you can avoid overspending and keep your home running smoothly. For most homeowners, the easiest starting point is the 50% rule. If the repair will cost less than half the price of a comparable new appliance, repair it. If it's more than half, replacement makes a better long-term sense. But like most household decisions, the rule works best when you understand the context. Starting with her current pricing. If you haven't shopped for appliances in years, sticker shock is real. Common household units run anywhere from a few $100s to several thousand. A major repair on a midlife appliance may get you another few years of service and buy time to plan for a new model that fits your long-term budget. Warranties and recalls tilt decisions heavily toward repair. If your item is still under warranty, the fix is often free or low cost. Always check recalls.gov or the Consumer Product Safety Commission before authorizing any work. And then there's the age. Most major appliances last 10 to 15 years, with outliers such as freezers and water softeners pushing well beyond. If your machine is bumping up against its expected lifespan, repair begins to look like a short-term patch rather than a long-term solution. Finally, consider energy efficient, even modest improvements in refrigerator or washer design can trim utility bills. If your older model has been gulping power, upgrading may pay off faster than you think. Plenty of situations favor repair, especially for units that performed well until the moment of breakdown. A newer appliance with a single failed component, for example, might still have years of usable life once it's fixed. If performance was strong, a sudden failure often is mechanical rather than systemic, and a qualified technician can restore it quickly. Repair also makes sense for homeowners with eco-friendly priorities. Extending the life of an efficient appliance keeps it out of the landfill, reduces manufacturing demand, and often uses far fewer resources than building a new replacement. Sometimes you simply don't need new features. Many appliances evolve slowly. The wood dishwasher you bought a decade ago might still meet your needs just fine. A repair can maintain reliable performance without forcing a costly upgrade. While DIY repairs can save money, be honest about your limits. Swapping an accessible part or cleaning a clogged filter is one thing. Handling wiring, gas connections, or internal plumbing is another. When the job involves safety risks or could void the warranty, call a pro. On the flip side, when certain signs point clearly toward replacement, if your unit is approaching the decade mark and repair calls are becoming a yearly ritual, The math usually favors buying new. Hidden symptoms matter too. A washing machine that no longer cleans well or a refrigerator that constantly cycles may be failing in ways unrelated to the immediate repair. Energy performance is a big motivator. New models often carry dramatically improved efficiency ratings, especially in fridges, washers, and dishwashers. What looks like a pricey replacement can quickly turn into a monthly savings plan on your utility bill. Also, don't ignore modern features. If you've eyed smart controls, quiet operating dishwashers, induction cooktops, or advanced water saving washers, a major breakdown is often the logical moment to upgrade. Before finalizing a purchase, factor in installation costs, which can bump up your total by $100 to $200 or more. Many manufacturers require professional installation to keep warranties valid. Still, if you've got the muscle in a truck, hauling the appliance yourself can shave off delivery fees.
Future for voter ID bill in Senate is unclear. 5 weeks ago, Senate Republicans said they were bracing for an extended fight as they kicked off debate on their marquee election overhaul bill. Now they have quietly set aside what's known as the Save America Act. The question is, for how long? And is there an appetite to return to debating a bill that currently doesn't have a chance for passage? It's unclear what the future looks like for the legislation, which would require proof of citizenship to register to vote and photo ID at the polls. Republicans haven't garnered the Democratic support they would need for passage under the chamber's 60-vote threshold, nor has the extended floor debate changed the minds of most Senate Republicans when it comes to blowing up the chamber's rules on the filibuster to lower that threshold to 51. The Senate had planned to stay on the legislation, but new priorities with impending deadlines sucked much of the oxygen away from it once they returned last week from the spring recess. And for the moment, it has essentially been abandoned. On Monday, Senate Majority Leader John Thune told reporters they would pivot off the bill to focus on their budget reconciliation measure to fund Department of Homeland Security immigration enforcement, along with other pressing issues like renewing Section 702 of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act before its new deadline next week. On Tuesday, the Senate agreed 52-46 on a motion to proceed to the budget resolution that would allow for a reconciliation bill. Democrats and voter advocacy groups on Tuesday were already claiming victory. The Campaign Legal Center said the Senate had stopped debate on the bill and that this development means the legislation has effectively stalled out and failed in the Senate amidst opposition from lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. The debate on the election bill was not the splashy, talking filibuster that many on the Hill and in the White House had pushed for. Senate leadership resisted pursuing that strategy because of the burden it would put on the majority members to maintain a quorum throughout. Hawley also said there wasn't enough support widely to abolish the filibuster. Is there a majority of my colleagues who would like to do that? Are there 51? I don't think there are, he conceded. And what's transpired on the Senate floor hasn't been close to the 24/7 full-court press that influencers on the right had called for, or that Republican members of the House wanted. There were several days when no Republican senator spoke about the issue on the Senate floor. Even a rare weekend session last month focused on the legislation that was a dud, with most senators not hanging around for the debate. Even Senator Mike Lee of Utah, who has been leading the charge for the talking filibuster on the bill, has not spoken on the topic in the Senate floor since the chamber left for recess, when he addressed his colleagues for 2 hours on the topic. Republican senators argued the exercise was still successful. Senator Ron Johnson of Wisconsin, who supports ending the filibuster, said he believes having it on the floor was valuable. I think we showed Democrats are complete hypocrites. They said they're for voter ID and then they voted against it. So useful exercise. But again, the real truth of matter, in short, in order to actually pass it, We have to limit the filibuster. Senator Mike Rounds of South Dakota said we picked up some really good opportunities to put Democrats in unfavorable positions with regard to women or men and women's sports or so forth, referring to President Donald Trump's push to tack unrelated legislation on the voter ID bill targeting transgender Americans. We think this has been a successful approach just by putting them in an uncomfortable position, he said. But their colleagues across the building aren't enthused and are re-upping their threats to try to derail other legislation unless the Senate moves safe in some capacity. Republican Anna Paulina Luna from Florida has repeatedly threatened to tank FISA, for example, unless the voter ID bill is attached. Thune, I know you don't like me for saying this, John, but this is literally your call, Luna said. You're literally blocking this. We're not going to vote for FISA unless voter ID is contained in it. You're listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for Thursday, April 23rd. We read the Buffalo News live on weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and rebroadcast at 4 p.m. For more information, call 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been Ruth Nowotniak and Pat Lamont. Thank you for listening.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. Coming up next, the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service with the New York Times Business section. Following that at 11 o'clock is the Buffalo News. Stay with us for these... No, not the Buffalo News. It's the USA Today. We just listened to the Buffalo News. Stay with us. program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability